Attention. Welcome to the Different Spectrums podcast. We dive into the wild world of mental health discussions. Get ready for profound talks, a sprinkle of humor and sarcasm, and a touch of colorful language. Just a quick heads up, our show reflects our individual opinions, which may not align with the standpoint of the podcast, our featured guests, or any related corporate entities. Our mission? To illuminate through laughter and satire because everyone needs a good chuckle. Chill out and don't stress over the small stuff. Legal troubles? No, thank you. Cancel culture? Please spare us. We'd rather keep this space lawsuit free. So buckle up, have a good time, and join us as we navigate the vibrant realm of mental health on the Different Spectrums podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. By using our link, you can get 10% off your first month of therapy. So, Naz, as a therapist on BetterHelp, what has your experience been like?
I've been doing it since January 2021, and it's been really fun and exciting. I've been able to reach clients all over the United States and the world. I've had good relationships. I've had folks that I've had for a couple months and a good handful where I've had for almost 2 years now. So it's magnificent. I've enjoyed my time and my clients. I love them.
Awesome. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/DSP or choose Different Spectrums podcast during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Hey everybody, we back again.
Hey, we're back. We're live.
I'm Spencer, of course. That's our licensed clinical therapist, Naz.
They call me doctor now. Clinical doctor.
Anybody in this room?
Medical doctor. I got to practice, and I'll cut you open.
Do you?
Yep.
Do you?
Nope.
Oh, where?
Tijuana.
All right. Well, moving on from that. Remember, don't take us too seriously.
Or do. It's completely up to you.
There you go. Also, don't forget to run up those likes for us. So, today we have a special guest. She is a mindfulness and performance coach with athletes all over the country, as well as a licensed master of social work and also a former D1 athlete and collegiate coach. She's also a director and on the medical advisory council for Morgan's Message. Please welcome Emily Perrin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. Oh,
I know, right?
And a hand clap.
Yeah,
Thank
no.
you.
You can't hear it, but they're there.
They're there. They're there, people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Hell yeah. We're very happy to have you here and to talk about our show for today. Daisy Jones and the Six.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So some topics we're gonna be covering is coping, childhoods, and depending on your parents, like what that kind of means. And then also some drug use in there. Yeah. Saw a lot of sugar.
There's a lot of it, y'all.
Didn't go in the coffee, I'll tell you that.
It went right up my nose.
Is anything before we get into the show?
One of my clients, random side story before I get into the real story.
Yep.
What?
Story before a story.
So,
That's
it's the
what we call it.
pre-story. I like to make sure it's warmed up.
Yep. He doesn't talk a lot on this podcast, so he decided to have a story time before the story time. Yeah.
You're making me feel like a
Gotta get
narcissist.
You are. What are you talking
It's
about?
called autism.
Okay. Self-diagnosed.
Shut the fuck. God damn it. You throw me off. I had a couple clients from New York. And you don't really hear too much about cocaine usage in the Midwest. Mushrooms, yeah, for sure. Tons of weed. And then cocaine, really not so much. Then I got some clients out in New York and they're like, oh yeah, everyone's doing cocaine. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So this is cultural. When it comes to New Yorkans.
Mm-hmm.
New Yorkans.
I don't know if that's a word.
New Yorkans.
New Yorkers.
New Yorkans.
You idiots. They even have a magazine called
York.
I like New Yorkers.
New Yorkers.
I was just shocked. She's like, "Oh yeah, everyone's doing cocaine." I was like, "Are you doing cocaine?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm doing cocaine." Can't we stop doing the cocaine? You're anxious as shit. God damn it!
It's part of my culture. Don't make me change.
I know. As a New Yorker,
Hey.
don't make me change. So I want to get into a legit quick thing. So as a lot of folks know, but this podcast will be out maybe like 3-4 weeks, after this. But it was graduation at all the universities. And it's a magnificent time for everyone, families, the kids, right? It's awesome. But if you go in little sub pockets, there'll be like social work, graduations where it just be them, little pockets, right? But some of the bigger schools, they got it to where it's just the cultural houses. So it's just the Latino Cultural Center, the Black Culture Center, the Queer Center, right? They'll have these like small little gatherings, very, very loving. And boy, I tell you, it was awesome, man, watching the kids go up there. And, out of the 100 kids that graduated, right, I seen at least 7 of them just from this was the COVID class. Then every year I start seeing bigger and bigger percentages of these major universities, these pockets, Latinx kids. And boy, I tell you, a couple of my boys went up there and they started talking, and like one was just crying. I'm like, this is too much. Magnificent to see these pockets of students, and as we know, immigrants are the biggest business owners in America. Where they're the ones opening all these new businesses all the time. It's a lot of immigrants and immigrant families. So it's magnificent to see all these Spanish speakers, these dreamers, these kids that are undocumented. Right. And they're going through a lot of shit. And then here they are with these bright, shiny degrees in one of the best universities for engineering in America. I always like to say that. Best engineering schools, one of the top 3 in America. And they're doing it. And it's magnificent to see this brown joy. And to know that I'm the one that helped them get there through all the shit. So it's really cool. I was sitting back there fucking bawling my eyes out, Spence. I even texted you. I'm like, this is intense. And then the moms go up there and start talking. It was just magnificent. So shout out to everyone that listens to podcasts. If you have any family members that are graduated, whether you be, immigrant, whether it be Black, whether it be brown, whether it be first generation, single mom, or neurodivergent as hell, autistic as hell, and you struggled and you got a lot of services and you made it. Shout out to everyone that's graduated, whether high school or college. All right. Let's get to the show. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop whoop.
Hey.
There you go.
Only America.
What'd you do with your arms?
It was my Don King impression. Don King.
America.
A great American man.
The best American
He's actually
man.
terrible.
Salute.
Yeah, he's actually terrible.
He is a terrible person.
He's terrible. Yeah, terrible. Okay.
Anyway, let's get
into
into the show.
Yeah.
Easy is. She was born with every advantage. Her father's money, her mother's beauty.
Excuse me.
She had anything and everything at her disposal.
Mama left. Do you ever shut up?
And yet, she was completely alone.
No one wants to hear your voice.
Swear she was put on this earth to embarrass me.
I see you still like to watch.
So go ahead and regret me, but I'm beating you to a dude. You regret me and I regret you. You couldn't handle your liquor and you can't seem to handle the truth.
I was the only one who seemed to notice something had changed. And then one night, everything changed. Billy! He's supposed to be in Georgia, Graham.
Well, he's not, all right? I bet he never even fucking left.
What's wrong with you guys?
Hey, not now, Eddie.
You sound great tonight, man. And you were fucking ripping in there. What's going on?
See the guy in there in the plaid suit?
Who, the creepster with the comb over and the girl half his age?
Yeah, he's our dad.
I mean, I was 4 when he left. So I never really had a father. But it was different for Billy. He worshiped the guy.
I'm gonna say something.
Billy, no. Billy, hey,
no, I
Billy!
have to.
Help you?
Yeah, you know who I am?
Should I?
Yeah, you should.
Well, then of course I do. I'd recognize that guitar anywhere. Anything else?
Hey, it's not worth it, all right? Let's go home.
Take it. Go on, take it. I said fucking take it!
I've got no use for it. I gave it to you. Something to remember me by.
There you go, asshole. Oh, come on, come on, come on.
Guess we're not getting paid for that gig, huh?
Billy. You okay, man?
I can still see the look.
Fuck do you think you're doing, Billy? What the fuck is wrong with you? If you think that I'm gonna let you ruin our life, my life, I don't give a fuck what you do until this baby comes, but when it does, you are gonna show up for me. Look at me! You are gonna show up for me, for this child, and you're gonna keep showing up for the rest of your goddamn life. Do you understand? Do you understand? Claim yourself.
Hey everyone, have you been looking for something to help you when you feel extra fidgety? How about when you have a sensory overload? Well, I'm here to introduce you to the Oh No fidget roller. It helps me regulate and also feel at ease. The Ono roller comes in 5 different materials, including plastic, aluminum, steel, titanium, and silicone. You can use our code DSP10 to get 10% off your order when you visit onoroller.com and get your roll on. All right, we back again.
We're back and we're live. Just live is Liquid Death, a wonderful drink that I'm promoting. They're not our sponsors, but they should be.
Why are you promoting them then?
Because I'm drinking it right now. And my dad goes,
I emailed them. They have not emailed us back.
Those bastards. Fuck those bastards. Don't buy this shit. Don't buy it.
Even though I did love their tea. Their peach tea was delicious. So
love a good peach.
Anyways, we have a guest here. Emily. Just kind of want to get into it right away. You're a former D1 athlete as well as a collegiate coach. How did you address your mental health back then?
Ooh.
And what would you change now that you're in the position you are in?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I do what I do for a living because I can't say that I didn't address my mental health, but when I was in college, we weren't having the conversations that we're having now around mental health.
Yep.
We weren't talking about it. It wasn't a thing. And it was still very taboo. I am pretty open about my own mental health journey, and I've been through some pretty significant stuff, childhood trauma, and I think that really impacted a lot of my life and my career as an athlete. And I have been in therapy since I was 13, right? So I did have help. My family was one that was fortunate enough to have access to resources and good health care, right? However, I think we are now moving in a time where the conversation around mental health and taking much more proactive measures around overall well-being, right? Which we know sometimes I feel like the term mental health is a little misleading, right? Because like the mind and body are constantly talking to each other. They don't work separately, right? So a lot of times what we're talking about when we talk about mental health is overall holistic well-being. And I don't think we were having those conversations. We were not having those conversations around how to take care of ourselves. We were not those certainly were not things that I was thinking about. They were not things that I was equipped with. So in that way, sure. Did I go to therapy when I was a college athlete? Yes. Did anybody know? No. Was I doing a bunch of other things to take care of my mental health or overall health and well-being? Not really. And so I think that has actually shaped a lot of why I do what I do today, because we are moving in a time where, look at the college programs that I work with. People are bringing people in like me to address exactly this. So I think that's a main driver in why I do what I do.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, read a little bit about you. I know your dad was an assistant coach for UVA for almost 20 years or so, and then started to do his own practice when it comes to like performance coaching. Did that drive you to also go into this field, or did you just feel like I really want to be in here because of, my own journeys as well?
Yeah, both and. It's hard to, our parents, as we're going to talk about when we get into the show, our parents, our family units are so influential in our lives. And from a very young age, I literally was born and then 2 months later was sitting courtside at a basketball stadium, right? That was my life, because back in the day when UVA played at U-Hall, like the family sat on the court, right? This was the, early 90s. Like we didn't have stadiums like we have today, right? And so I grew up in a locker room. I grew up in a team. I grew up riding back in the day. Families would ride the bus with the team to games, right?
Wow.
So that was the life that, and then, my dad, yes, he has a PhD in sports psychology. So, I had some of, men's soccer in particular, because my dad went to a couple World Cups. Like most people know the name Landon Donovan, right? Like Landon Donovan was calling our home line when I was a kid.
Wow.
Right? So I was really exposed to that from a very young age. and just listening to some of the, conversations and the work that my dad was doing at 8, 9, 10 years old. So yes, that absolutely was really influential. And at the same time, I think the world of sports psychology and kind of performance or mindset coaching is not necessarily mental health. Do they overlap? Yes.
Yep.
But I have to say that, sure, I saw that in my own household, and mental health was still not a thing that we were really talking about. So yes, my dad was 1000% influential. And to this day, it's incredible. We worked on a couple projects together, and he's such a mentor and kind of a role model for me. And I think my own journey has also paved my own path, kind of my own niche and my own style and my own flavor. Flavor is kind of an interesting word to use, but I'm going to use it. Flavor in how I work with people and what I do.
It's got, I don't know how much flavor it is, because, white people don't use flavorings, but
Oh my God.
She's like, I got a little spice.
It's salt and pepper.
I got salt in there. It's spicy. What? What? What?
My tummy hurts. No, pause. We use flavor all the time when we're talking about like autism. Where are you at? Is it not spiced, or are you like deep fried? And it's all of it is autism. All of it. All of it is valid. Question. You pivoted. You did a social work degree, so right? I'm a doctor in social work, master's in social work for years. Why social work? It's the only degree there is that actually counts, but but why?
Yeah. Okay. So my therapist, when I've had a couple pretty like rock bottoms in my life. And one was actually when I left college coaching when I was 26. And that was really the first time that I'd ever left sport. I mean, when I graduated, and finished my college career at UVA, I went straight into coaching. So, when I left college coaching at 26, I mean, I had a lot going on mental health wise. I was kind of living in a chronic state of panic and anxiety, but I was also having an identity crisis, right? I had no idea who I was, what I wanted to be doing, had a relationship that just went very sideways. And my therapist, I found a therapist that really was doing amazing trauma work, was doing EMDR, and she was a social worker. She was an LCSW. And through our work together and, kind of putting 2 and 2 together, I was like, LCSW, like, what does that mean? I never even had, to be fair, heard of it. And she really opened my eyes to the field of social work. And I'm a pretty curious creature by nature. And so when I knew and kind of landed on the general path of how I wanted to start working with people, I knew I was going to have to go back to school. And I did. I looked at social work. I looked at just going back and getting a counseling degree. I looked at psychology or sports psychology. And I just really resonated with social work. And I felt very strongly about going into a field that was not driven by the medical model. And there is just something in me that really struggles with this DSM driven world and what's wrong with you and constant illness. And I knew that the field of social work was different. And I also really felt passionate about owning my own identity as a white woman who is really privileged, and knowing that if I genuinely wanted to do this work and genuinely wanted to connect with my athletes who were not going to be me more often than not, and my identity, I knew I needed to get outside of my comfort zone, and I knew I needed to grow and I needed to learn. And I knew that social work was also going to provide me with that lens of power and privilege and oppression that I had never really been exposed to. So that is why I went into social work, and I will hands down say best decision of my life. I'm so, as I literally, the sticky note of the end of our social work values is right above my computer. So like, as I look at it, like I'm very proud. I think it's one of the proudest things I've ever done, become a social worker.
I have a bias against a lot of psychologists because they don't practice some of the things that we do when it comes to the biopsychosocial, breaking down all the systems that people are in. They're very focused on one different thing and billing, and it's very not humanistic.
Yeah.
But besides the point, have faith in me in this one. I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to sound a little rough, but have faith that I'm going in a good direction.
I do.
So, you've got some broken bits. What makes you a therapist? Why should you be a therapist? You're messed up like all the other ones. What the hell you got to offer anyone?
I love that question. And I so appreciate it because I do, because I really think that there is, and I'm going to tell you right now, I have really struggled with imposter syndrome, right? Feeling like, oh my God, like I don't have my shit together. Why should I be the one that's helping people and people with like very significant trauma? Like, uh, you should look into my closet. Like there is some serious skeletons up in there, right? So like, I get it. And I think that is maybe part of the reason why I'm a good therapist, because I'm not on a pedestal, right? I am right there with you. And I really think that this such like almost detrimental view on therapy is that you're going to go to therapy and you're going to sit across from someone and they're going to know more than you know about yourself. And they're going to have the answers and they're going to help you figure it all out. When the reality is like, y'all, we are imperfectly, perfectly made and we are whole as we are. And sometimes we just need somebody to hold our hand and to bear witness and to be with us. And I think that sometimes people who have been to hell and back can really do that. And that's one of my favorite things in my job. I mean, I really, one of my mentors is like she really ingrained this into me that like, it's not so much about having the answers. It's about being able to be with and ask the right questions. And I think that's what makes a good therapist. Does that help answer your question?
It does, because there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are also therapists and healers, caregivers, and they got stuff. And as we talked about with another sports mental health practitioner, Corey Yeager, he called me a wounded healer, and I've never heard that term before, a wounded healer.
Beautiful.
And I'm like, yeah, I like that.
Beautiful.
And Spencer might have seen it the other day. I posted on LinkedIn. I didn't run it by you. And being an Arab dude, right, and a Mexican dude, there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of people post things on social media, this or that, right. Some folks read about some stuff, they see some stuff on the news, but I'm in there working with these kids, Arab and Muslim kids going through things right now. I'm in there working with these kids of color, these immigrant kids, right. I embody what we call diversity, equity, inclusion. A lot of folks just read about it. This lived experiences is for real. It's a real thing. And to be a counselor, to be someone with lived experiences, and then you got a degree, is magnificent. The degree, my dad always jokes, your degree ain't worth shit. I remember I got the degree and I told him that. And then, a couple years later, we're making money. He's like, oh, looks like that degree was worth something. And then I got the doctor, and he said, well, it looks like it must be worth something because they call you doctor now. But I always tell students, I'm nobody. I'm just a dude trying to help you figure it out. Well, no, Naj, you're magnificent. You're this and that. I said, if you actually knew me, you'd probably be scared of a few things and probably kind of hate me. But I do better every day. And I'm trying to be better. Me and Spence trying to be better men every day. Trying to grow every day. And so this wounded healer thing, I just wanted to push on you because you were vulnerable there. You were vulnerable there. And so I was like, look at that. To me, those are always the best counselors because you know what bottom is. How you going to go to other counselors that are lucky and blessed, not just privileged, but blessed? I mean, they can do a lot of good work too, but you don't understand their mind like someone else, right? When black and brown folks sit in front of me, I understand all the cultural things. They don't have to explain it to me. When you talk to someone that's been through trauma, hardship, abuse, physical, mental, sexual, emotional, right? You already know where their mind's at because you've been there.
Yeah.
There's validity into that. So I wanted to appreciate you for that and also help everyone else on the podcast that's listening that also has a trauma history.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're worthless. Doesn't mean that you're broken.
You're human.
And I misspoke because I think everyone's broken, but there's beauty in the broken bits. I don't think there's such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I add one thing there? Because I think this also is a conversation that, it's starting to circulate, right, on social media, but also just within like a couple like trauma informed spaces that I'm a part of. And I think to go off what you're saying, which is like, also, if we're actually all invested in the goal of helping people heal and be in connection and community with one another, why is healing only reserved for a licensed professional or like a doctor or right? And that's not me saying that like I don't value the degree that I have or the doctorate that you got, right?
Yep.
And what I'm also saying is, again, if we want to break down, right, the accessibility to care and connection and healing, we have to almost think from different lenses at times, right?
do.
Like people can heal and we have to have people heal without going to therapy, you know? So like, and I take that as like, so who am I to say that I'm better than anybody else because I'm a therapist? I'm not, right? Like, trust me, I know firsthand, I live in my head all day long, right? Like I'm not. So I think that's another piece of this as well. And like,
Yep.
yeah, I think all the therapists out there, like, you don't get a gold star for not being broken, right? Like you just don't.
In fact, I think you get a gold star for being broken and bouncing back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resilience, right?
I'm gonna kick it back over to Spence. I just wanted to pivot, take her down the path because she was vulnerable.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
thanks.
appreciate that. And I also have to agree. I think there are plenty of people in our lives that aren't therapists that help us on a day-to-day basis. So yeah,
Right.
just want to put that out there too. So you are the director and you're also on the medical advisory council for Morgan's Message, right? Could you explain to us what is Morgan's Message and what's your role in there? What do you do?
Yeah, Morgan's Message is a fantastic. I mean, oh my goodness, since starting in 2020, I believe it's exploded, but it's a nonprofit started by the friends and family of Morgan Rogers, who died by suicide in 2019. She was a women's lacrosse player at Duke, and
Heard about this.
it's an incredible. I'm so honored to be a part of this organization, and I got involved with them shortly. I think it was the fall of 2019 because at the time I was living in Durham. I was doing a lot of work and consulting at Duke, and one of the teams I was working with was Duke Women's Lacrosse. So I really from the start got involved with them and was doing speaking engagements and workshops and all this stuff. And then last year, about this time, took on the director of their medical advisory council. So what that and within Morgan's Message, right? It's a nonprofit that really aims to create awareness and break down stigma around mental health, specifically in the sport community. They have two main initiatives. They have an awesome podcast, The Mental Matchup, which you guys should definitely check out. And then they have an education program, which is basically like a peer-to-peer facilitated awareness and education program. And so my role is really kind of large scale oversight around, okay, so yeah, one of my passions is like trauma informed space, trauma informed group spaces in particular, because when we're getting together and we're in community and connection and we're talking about mental health, tough stuff is going to come up. And in order to help people feel like they belong and they are included and they can access safety within that environment and have those talks, there's stuff we need to make sure, right? There's boundaries, there's expectations, there's group norms. So I oversee that. I also oversee and work with our education program director to actually like create the education and the content that's going out to them. So it's an amazing, and then I'll do some speaking stuff as well, but it's an amazing organization. For anyone that's listening, I highly encourage that you guys check it out. And the other cool thing is that we just started what we're calling our at-large program, which is for people in the community. So you guys could be like at-large ambassadors, people, you don't have to be an athlete to be involved in the organization. So it's really cool. We're doing amazing work. And that's very, my role is I guess it's part-time, but we're constantly rolling with that. So it's a lot of work, but it's amazing.
So I'm gonna pivot, but on topic. So you do a lot of stuff. And so and there's this other thing I read on the page, right? And you're stretching and they call it yoga, but it looked like witchcraft. It looked like Satan's work.
Look like the devil if I ever see it.
Like Bobby Boucher's mom said, they're the devil.
Yoga is the devil.
Bobby, that's the devil. So what is this yoga stuff and why is it healing? Is it good for folks? Why is yoga so recommended? Those are one of the best practices for anxiety and mental health.
Okay. So I love this witchcraft. Yeah. And to go back to your first comment, which is like, you do a lot of things. Yes. I constantly feel like a chicken with my head chopped off running around, but I love it. It keeps me honest.
I love chicken.
Yeah. I mean, hey, so, okay. I love movement-based practices. And I think this really gets into my background in mindfulness and mindfulness intervention. And to be fair, we know, especially in working with trauma, like somatic-based interventions are actually really, they should be the standard, right? Because we know that really difficult experiences, whether you're going to label them as trauma or not, right? However you're making meaning of them, they get stored in the body. I mean, it's a nervous system thing. It's not a cognitive thing. So movement-based practices, I just really resonate with. They've been a massive part of my own healing. And so, yeah, I did my just basic kind of like 200-hour yoga certification. But what I love about yoga, and I don't actually call it yoga, I call it integration. They're integration sessions. So I'll give you an example, right?
Wait a minute, you putting us in a matrix now.
Integration.
Integration.
Separate but equal. Separate but equal.
we don't integrate. It's a separatist state. You know.
Let me give you this hat right here.
Oh my God. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine. So how I might use this in a sports setting, or how I do use this, is if I'm going to go into a team and we're going to talk about mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is it's quite a buzzword right now, but really it just means, we are paying attention, we're doing it on purpose, and we're doing it in kind of this very balanced way, right? It's a great tool, way of being, skill for an athlete, because it allows us to just like really be where our 2 feet are. But what we often don't recognize is like, that's not just a mental skill. That's not a thinking thing, right? As we talked about earlier, the mind and the body don't operate separately. So we really actually need to get people getting in their bodies, right? And I just find that movement can be really helpful. Athletes tend to really resonate with movement-based practices. So simple stuff like helping an athlete really understand how maybe their mental narratives are impacting their physical body, right? So I work a lot in lacrosse, and in lacrosse, like, your grip is a big part of how you handle your stick, right? And how you throw and how you shoot. And so if an athlete is dealing with some really tricky kind of what I call sticky narratives, right? That are kind of getting in the way of their performance, like, what if we dropped into the body for a second and noticed how that's impacting your shoulders, or clenching through the muscles or the grip, right? And so then working with the body to release the tension in the shoulders and to adjust the tension in the grip, right? So it's stuff like that. And I think we can learn those techniques and gain more awareness around our mind-body connection through movement-based practices. And so I call it an integration practice because we're really integrating the mind and the body through movement. We do it in other ways too. I mean, breath work and grounding and all that stuff, but that's why you see yoga pictures.
Fair enough.
Obviously, right. I'm always telling you in good faith, just go with me. And you did. Because clients, everyone listening is going to be resistant to everything. It doesn't matter. Everyone has this PDA, pathological kind of demand avoidance. When they're told something's healthy, like, I ain't going to do that shit. Or, that's not going to work. I already tried it and it did. Well, okay, just calm down for a fucking second. This isn't voodoo, right? This isn't magic, but I need you to kind of go with it and let's actually try this and it'll work. Yeah. And all my athletes, they're like, holy shit. I remember working with my women's hockey team and we're doing the meditations because I'm really, 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 for some reason, I'm gifted at these meditations.
I bet you are. You got a nice, smooth voice.
When I actually want, no.
I knew it. What's on the voice? Now meditate.
Cookie.
Think about the cookie.
But when I actually go into like therapist mode and like, all right, we're doing like trauma work now or like calming, regulation, voice changes. And I remember telling the girls like, hey, I'm going to do this meditation, but it's also like, what they call it, a little hypnosis in it too. So I'm going to get their legs to kind of go numb, paralyzed. And one of the girls opened up her eyes and was like, and I was like, oh my God, it scared the shit out of me. And when we came back to, I said, girl, what was that? She said, I was literally terrified because my legs were like done. I was like, okay. I thought she was like, this shit isn't working. She's like, no, I'm stuck.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember being taught all these grounding and meditative things that are only like 5 minutes, not very long. I'm talking 3-5 minutes. Shout out to my pops who listens to every pod. And he was telling Spencer and me the other day, he said, I listened to your Invincible podcast about breathing and all this stuff, and there's all this self-hatred, but we did a meditation, very quick one, like a 2-minute meditation. And he's like, damn, man, I was freaking out before that because some other stuff was on my mind. And he's like, I was good.
Yeah.
So he wants me and him to start doing more meditation things at the end of our podcast. And I was like, maybe. But we're
meditation time.
And Dad's got a lot of stuff, right? Also neurodivergent himself, tons of trauma, prison, a lot of stuff, a lot of loss. And so for him to get his mind to calm is like a miracle. So that was pretty cool. So I appreciate you bringing that up and talking about that. I work a lot with my athletes, a lot of my students that are autistic. Yeah. We got to buy ourselves 4 seconds. Emotions only last 4 seconds, but us as humans keep re-triggering it. So we can buy a 4-second pause, 30-second pause. We got a shot. Going from a full meltdown at a 10, maybe even suicidality at a 10, to regulating, maybe getting to a 7 or a 6. And now we can enact a safety plan, the grounding plan. Can't name that because the season's going on and stuff, but got a player that's magnificent and like doing really good right now. And I'm like, hey, we're going to do this breath work before we do every set, every rep, before you get into this one stance. And then all of a sudden everything's opening up.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how this stuff can help. Spence, I'll give you another question if you got any, but if not, we'll get into the show.
Yeah. And just kind of also validate just yoga in general. I mean, a lot of great athletes use it. LeBron James, Kevin Love,
Kobe,
Calvin Johnson from the Detroit Lions, who had an amazing career. Megatron.
Hey, I'm trying to get Joe Johnson to join the podcast. One of my favorite players of all time in the NBA. He's got his own entire yoga thing and practice going on. Massive company. Trying to get him to come on.
Awesome.
Come on, Joe. Get on the show.
ISO Joe.
ISO Joe. Probably just yelled at him and then just like, I'm not doing this. All right, bye. See you later. Yeah, no. All right. So I think we're ready to go into this show. Like I said before, we are doing Daisy Jones and the Six, right? So about this group who are just kind of who did a show and then they broke up after a show. Like they got big and then they broke up afterwards. I saw on here that it was also like the author of the book said that they wrote it after Fleetwood Mac, like inspiration from that. And if you know Fleetwood Mac, they've had a very troubled go as a group. But yeah, and so the first scene has to do with Daisy, one of the main characters. There's a house party going on. She's a young child and she's listening to music, but she's singing very loudly. And so her mom hears this and just bursts in and it's just like, nobody wants to hear you sing. Nobody wants to hear that. And so, and then we also have this narrator kind of going through everything, just saying like, hey, she did have everything. She had a very, nice, sheltered, I guess, childhood with rich parents and all that. But at the same time, she was also alone. She was by herself because her parents were really even there. And so tough childhoods, no matter what kind of background you come from, can always affect you in the future.
Yep.
Yeah, doesn't matter. So kind of want to know what made you want to do this scene. And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, so I'll preface this, which is this was a book that I read, I think 2 years ago, and then it came out as a show. And when I read the book, oh my God, I devoured it in like 2 days. I thought it was just so fantastic, so complex, and so much going on, so many moving pieces. Easily, I'll say like one of, I think, the best books I've read of all times.
Okay.
I will say this. I think this was a Reese Witherspoon production. I don't think the show actually captured the full depth of the book, but I chose this because I just remember this scene from the book and then them putting it in the show and just being really profoundly impacted by it, like watching this and something that kept replaying in my head. So I don't know if you guys are aware or have heard of Lisa Ferrance. She's has what's called the Ferrance Institute. She's kind of like a more East Coast, like she's in the Baltimore area. She runs, she does fantastic trauma training.
Okay.
And she talks about, she spends a lot of time in her training talking about attachment. And we can break attachment down or we can leave it because it is pretty complicated. But, the reality is when we are born into the world, we have to, for survival, depend on and attach to caregivers,
Yep.
right? Whether it's a mom, grandma, dad, doesn't matter, right? We have to. And that attachment, the connection to our caregivers is really influential, either what we receive or what we do not receive. And I think this, for me, this scene right here is just, especially when the part where the mom is like, no one wants to hear you. Think about receiving that message from someone that is supposed to love you unconditionally and someone that is supposed to help you feel like you belong and you are seen and you are heard. And anyways, I'll go back to Lisa Ferrance because she talks about how, the best thing we can do for kids is let them shine. Right? I mean, oh my gosh, think about the power of letting kids be and express themselves and be who they're meant to be. And in this scene, right, Daisy has these headphones on and she is just singing, enjoying the music, right? Being a kid. And that is just totally shut down. And think about the message that because we know, right? I mean, this is one scene in the movie, but if that's the message that she as a child is chronically receiving from the people that are supposed to love her, wow, think about how impactful that is. And for me, it's just like, so many of the people that I work with whether it's as a clinician, right, working as a therapist or as a coach working with athletes, I mean, this is not uncommon. Many people grow up with versions of this, right,
100%.
in households where they are not allowed to shine. Their parents do not want them to sing and their parents don't want to hear them. And just how, it breaks my heart, to be honest with you. So that's why I chose the scene. And then obviously, I think the rest of the book, right, is really about, although we can't say, right, I would never sit here and say like, oh, well, she's, goes on to become an addict and struggle and all that stuff because of that. We can't. This stuff is really complex, right?
Yep.
But it 1000% is a piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Man, the amount of clients that come in, they got that little childhood trauma piece, whether it doesn't always have to be physical abuse. Everyone thinks it's always beatings. Not a lot of folks go through beatings. A good majority of my kiddos, clients, they go through just neglect.
Correct.
Neglect or just not loving and attentive, not validating, not affirming. And so you're getting at the not affirming stuff, but also I'm sure there was some emotional abuse going on there too. So it could be emotional abuse, manipulation, devaluing. You're terrible, you're shit, no one wants to hear it. So I think of a young little autistic girl having their earphones on, having a blast, dancing and singing. You're in a whole nother universe. And then, why can't you be normal? Like that short that we just did on Float where the dad, why can't you be normal? But then the dad recovers and he loves the kid. So that trauma is then healed. My dad was talking to me about this movie that he wants me and Spencer to do from Netflix. Really sad, but Spencer's agreed we're going to do it, but with a therapist with us. And he said there's some scenes in there that broke his heart where the parents just annihilated a kid. Based on multiple things, one of them being their sexuality. And my father's like, I just couldn't believe it. So we talked about the scene from Moonlight, Spencer, where the mom, it goes quiet and then the kid's just sitting there stuck and she just yells at him and says horrible things to him. So it's messed up to see how kids can be abused in different ways.
Oh, yeah.
And then they come to your office and they're always trying to be perfect. They're always trying to adjust and make people proud, and they're always giving too much and they're getting walked over. So you can see where the childhood stuff reverberates throughout the eons. One of my books to give people for that one is the drama of the gifted child. So you might have read that or heard of that one. That's a really good one. So the gifted child is intelligent enough to adapt themselves based on their parents' chaos.
Yeah.
And so the kid makes themselves smaller or bigger, or they become a parent, right? It depends. For me, not getting a lot of attention, you know, I was gifted enough to act up. And so I got in trouble a lot. So I got attention.
Yeah.
So there's certain ways that we do this thing. But yeah, I felt bad for her in that moment. I just thought this little autistic, joyful kid and then just get berated.
Totally.
There's no way that doesn't stick in you. And it's going to be in you every relationship, friendship, romantic partners. It's always going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing you also mentioned, right, is that it's not, and for all the parents that are potentially listening, like it's not about being perfect.
Nope.
It's about how you repair, right? How you, you know, the attunement, right, between a parent and a child, it's a dance and it's not always going to be perfect. I mean, parents, we can't be, that's not human, but how do you then repair, right? How do you then come back into connection with your child and say,
recover?
Yeah, you recover, right? Because that is what allows children, right, to know that it's not me, right? It's not my fault. It's not my worthiness. It's not, and again, like also think about the parallel to core beliefs here, right? I'm not a huge like CBT person, but like, I mean, just think about how this stuff, right, that we're talking about then impacts the child's core beliefs that they're really carrying through for the rest of their lives.
Yep. Beliefs lead to actions. Actions lead to thoughts. Thoughts lead to actions. Actions lead to, it all's tied together. It's a good scene. It's a good scene. Sad scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad I never really had to go too much of that verbal stuff. I tell you, my dad though, when I ran away from home and I lived with him, boy, he didn't even have to yell at me, Spence. He just look at me and like, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just look at me. I'm gonna send you back to your mama's. Oh, what do you need me to do? I'll clean all this shit up. Yep. Need me to paint the house? Okay.
I'll paint it again.
I'll paint it again.
Second time this month.
One of my favorite quotes was my dad working with him. I get so mad. I quit. He said, good. Now you ain't getting paid. Get back to work. He won't deny that one either. Some of it said it.
You're like, I did it.
I say it to my interns all the time. I said, you ain't getting paid anyways, but you better keep working. I'm joking. I'm not joking. Let's get to the next scene.
Yeah. So next scene, we see Daisy again. But this time she's heavily on the book of sugar. Yep, just like that. Look at that. Yep, just press your nose right up on the mic. There you go. No one can see or hear that, but it's fine.
No, they can hear.
And so yeah, then we see her, and then we also see that Billy's kind of also seeing some signs that she's kind of spiraling, going down the tubes there. Kind of goes back to like what we said already. It's just like those past behaviors are really kind of catching up to her now. Maybe they didn't at first, maybe in the childhood, but then all of a sudden, boom, as you get older, as the fame gets bigger and bigger and the spotlight's on you, then you kind of start to cope with these different things and in negative ways instead of positive ones. And so when you kind of see any of your athletes or clients you're working with, seeing them kind of spiral, like what do you do to kind of help them through this time? And, you know, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And the other piece about that scene is like, it's coming off of the first part of it is like the letter, she receives a letter and the letter is from,
I thought that was from her mama. Yep.
Yeah. The mom reaches out once she gets really big. Right. And so, yeah. And that then, I mean, it's the first thing she does is pick up the Coke. And so I think this is one of my supervisors when I was going through my MSW said this to me, and I thought it was so profound. Like all behavior is meaningful.
Yep.
All behavior is meaningful, right? And so I really am such a believer in, you know, especially for my athletes who are spiraling or maybe like turning towards maladaptive coping strategies is to the first thing, honestly, is to like the number one thing I want to try to do is remove the shame. I want to remove the shame. I want to humanize. I want to validate. I want to normalize, because the reality is like they're not alone. Right? They're not the only ones doing what they're doing. Yet they feel that way, and there's a lot of shame. And if we remove the shame, right, we can then more often than not do the work.
Yep.
But the first thing is, yeah, I mean, I am such a, like, I don't make it wrong. I try really hard. And some of this, like for my, other therapists and coaches out there, is like, one thing that I'm really constantly checking is like my own facial expression and my own body language when they share something like that with me, right? Especially if it is around substance abuse, because the last thing that I want them to pick up on is that I'm judging them. I want them to know and give them full permission, right? To be in connection with me and know that, like, I'm not going to judge. Right. And I think, again, you asked the question earlier about, like, why should you be a therapist? Like, been there, right? Like, there isn't much that I haven't seen in my life. Right. And so I really want them to know right off the bat that, like, there's actually a lot of this makes sense. And again, I think for substance abuse in general, many people use substances for a reason. Again, that behavior is meaningful.
Yep.
And why would we, why do we think shaming people is going to actually help them? Like, I don't know. That's just, it's never felt okay to me. It's never felt right. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Right. Really getting into this piece around, like, and Lisa Ferrens, who I've mentioned earlier, she calls, what people may call, like, maladaptive coping mechanisms or negative, coping methods, as, like, they're creative, to be honest with you, right? They're creative survival coping mechanisms, because more often than not, people are turning to things to numb. They are turning to things to forget them, right? They are trying to cope. They're trying to cope with the pain,
trying to live.
the lived experience. Yeah, they're trying to survive. And that, at a fundamental level, is not wrong. So, I think I may have done a spin-off off your question there, but
that's fine.
I got going.
So you pivoted towards, drugs, alcohol, substance abuse, and how to work on, getting rid of the shame. So then I do that. Yep. But then you go from the harm reduction, because at the end of the day, the shit's getting in the way.
Totally.
So I'll be like, okay, we get rid of shame. Yep. It's the same thing with cutting or self-harm. Okay.
Self-harm. Yep.
Say trichotillomania and picking eyebrows, things like that, right? People are ashamed. Same thing as intrusive thoughts of suicide, harm to others.
Absolutely.
Get rid of the shame. Well, now it doesn't have control of us. So now that big bad wolf is scary and it's a monster. But now if we train it, now it's just one of our pets and we can just chill with it and sit with it.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, yeah. I'll share a YouTube video. It's
great little, I love it.
Yeah, supposedly it's a Native American story. So gotta put citations in that. And so how do we remove the shame, but then get them away and move it into a harm reduction? Because, hey, man, we got stuff to do. And I'll pivot with some of my boys, because a lot of athletes, doesn't matter what gender, masculinity, dominance, we're not going to touch emotions. Also, but you're going to do the drugs and alcohol now. And to me, that's the biggest coward move you could do. What are you talking about? I ain't no coward. Well, you're running from doing all the work with me and you're treating everyone else like shit. Well, that seems like a coward move just because you don't want to go inside. Before I get to that, obviously I built a deep connection and they have good faith that no matter what, I'm going to lead them into a good direction.
Just first session, just like, you're a coward. It's like, what?
First minute of work.
First session, you a punk.
All right. Well, never doing this again.
I lift more than you. You a punk.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
I just weigh 120. What am I supposed to do?
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. I got one of the strongest women in America that's on my squad now, and she tiny. So she whooped my ass. She tiny. She's squatting like 500 pounds. It's fucking nuts.
Jesus. My back hurts thinking about that.
Oh my God. She can put up some weight. All right. So I like to do that with my really masculine dudes, because I'm like, how is this masculine? Running away from it. But also the TV fucks us up, man. All you see on TV, I hate it. If something bad, they have a bad day, they go get alcohol. Something bad happens, they get anxiety, they have an argument with their partner, I go get some alcohol. Every single time something bad happens. So we're teaching people through cinema on how to do these unhealthy coping mechanisms. instead of doing things like this, where we're talking and communicating, sitting with one another. Spencer just had me watch a magnificent clip from Sopranos. Go figure, Sopranos. Where these very masculine men are sitting and look at each other. Hey, man, how come you didn't love me? We asked his young son, Christopher, metaphorical son, hey, you thinking about suicide? What's going on? You okay? You having intrusive thoughts? The kid's like, oh, I'm not having those. That's for mental midgets. So that's the word he used.
He did.
And then Tony's like, no, man, for real, how you doing? Those moments there are how we healthily cope. But the thing is, everyone's so scared to be vulnerable. That's why I affirmed you being vulnerable earlier, because no one else wants to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And the other piece, right? And this is going to tie back to the clip of this is why I picked these two clips of the young Daisy, right, with the mom, and then now is I think people forget that or just don't make the connection that we learn how to regulate and be with our emotions based off our parents, right? Like our parents. I mean, talk about again, right? That attachment piece, right? If you have a parent, right, that is constantly shaming you, constantly or neglectful, right? Just not there at all. How is that child supposed to learn any affect regulation? They're not going to, right? So then, of course, right, as they grow up and they move through adolescence and they move through teenage years and into adulthood, they never learned. That was never modeled for them. They weren't having these conversations, right, with their parents. They weren't seeing that. And so again, right, it makes a ton of sense that it would be a lot easier for them. And the only way that they know how to cope is to pick up cocaine, right? Or to drink or to cut or to, right?
Healthy relationship, unhealthy. I mean.
Yeah, healthy relationships, right? So like a huge piece of, and this even gets into nervous system work, right? Like I think there is this like huge trend on Instagram and TikTok in particular around like nervous system regulation and regulate your nervous system. And like people, self-regulation comes second. Co-regulation comes first, right? Because again, we come into the world being born as babies, having to co-regulate, we cannot survive on our own. We have to regulate with our caregivers. So co-regulation is what actually paves the way to self-regulation. So again, right, in those really kind of early childhood years, if we don't have that co-regulation, right, that connection, that attachment and attunement with our parents, holy crap. Well, of course, right? Things like, again, these creative coping mechanisms or maladaptive coping mechanisms are going to take over. So that's the only other point that I wanted to make.
Damn. That's all I can say on that one, Spence. You saw my face. Spence knows my faces. I'm like, God, there's some good shit there.
Like,
that's the good cocaine. That girl cooking with
that's the mental cocaine.
She cooking with that hot spoon,
Oh my God.
That spoon hot as shit, boy. I tell you.
I feel like we need a disclaimer on this show that like no cocaine is present. Like no,
not yet.
Oh no.
Like, actually, no cocaine is present.
You're right.
Not on your side,
Huh?
Correction. We don't condone any violence on this podcast or any drug uses.
We do not like cocaine on this podcast,
but we love weed.
All right, sure. Yeah. Sure.
So pause. That co-regulation is magnificent. Magnificent what you just said. And then leads into the regulation piece, individual work. We're going to talk about racial shit real quick.
Okay. All right, bringing it in. Yep.
Well, because a lot of these Black and brown families, depending on where you're coming from, lower socioeconomic families.
Fair.
Again, it's dominance, masculinity. So volatility, that's what wins. That's what allows you to survive. So you're not really taught these depths of emotionality and these things. So I'm with my mother and my father, dominance. That's all it is. And so, right, Pops has got a short fuse. Mom, short fuse, right? They said that they were bipolar, not bipolar. And so they'll get labeled with borderline personality disorder, though.
Yes.
That's what they'll be labeled with because they're hot and cold with their emotions. And there's reasons for that. And so all my kids of color by white clinicians will get diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when in actuality it's just trauma. It's just trauma. And, they shame the kids, and they don't want to help and work with the kids, or they'll label them with ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. That's what they label me as.
Yeah.
And so you're also going to get a lot of autistic people that fall into this too, because they can't regulate, or they might do a little self-harming. Then we shame them. We label them as borderline, when they're actually autistic.
Yeah.
And then folks of color, we never get labeled with anything close to autism. And so to help deal, I'm talking about this because also people of color, the substance abuse is pretty high, but also amongst folks that are neurodivergent, autistic, ADHD, tons of self-medications with alcohol, marijuana, mushrooms. You're going to see a lot of that stuff. That's because they're trying to disconnect and dissociate.
Yeah.
They're trying to stop all the thoughts. And so I'm like, hey, man, I ain't going to shame it, but we got to find better ways.
Yeah.
So, maybe their parents weren't the best at it. I know mine weren't. Pretty good now. But, still, Spence goes, maybe. But I'm not the best at it either.
Still learning.
I'm a grown-ass man. But the thing is with you, I'm not going to ask you weight and height, but I'm sure you're not 6'2", 350 pounds. So when I get a little mad, it gets a little scary. And, my coworkers might get a little like, oh shit, now is mad. Well, yeah, because you guys keep saying this bullshit. So I have to regulate quicker. Now we're going to pivot and talk about women's issues. Y'all got to regulate quick as shit too, right? Because, oh, you're a bitch. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're aggressive. And so you got to regulate pretty quick too. And if you're a woman of color, even more so.
I was just going to say, yeah.
If you're a dude, large dude like me, then you definitely do, because now they're going to call the police on me, which has happened. So I've learned as I got older, like, oh shit. Right. Spencer doesn't see me going crazy like my dad every once in a while. I'll be like, I'll kill you. I love my dad. I got all the good and the bad from him, all the good and the bad. It's funny. Real quick pause. I tell my students, hey, you think you're paying for this master's degree, but most of the education comes from my father. No degree, 9 years in the penitentiary. And I said, so just to let you know, this is what you paid for. But it's some of the most magnificent healings they're ever going to get in teachings in their life. I just know how to word it and get to where we need to get.
Totally.
Magnificent scene. I'm glad you brought this up with addiction and drug usage. Very, very correlated with our population. All right, let's pivot over to Bobby.
Billy.
I know. I like saying I like saying Bobby.
And well, time, sure. So Billy,
Billy Bob.
Concert.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Having a concert. Then all of a sudden they spot this man in a plaid suit jacket and get really pissed off and just get off stage. Come to find out, it's his pop-up. It's his dad. And obviously we see that his dad left him and his brother, left the whole family, and left them a guitar. One of the things and then he throws that guitar on the ground, say, fuck you, Dad. How about that? Real punk rock before punk rock was a thing. So just saying. Yeah. And kind of coordinate with the scene that the next scene with that is that then we see him doing cocaine as he finds out his girlfriend is preggo.
Yeah. So he knew that they were having a baby, but it's kind of this like it's the piece around his father, right? Finding that. And to give a little backstory, the dad left their family, abandoned them, and claimed that he moved to Georgia, right? Which is like, 8 states away. Come to find out he was literally across town the whole time with like another wife. So that then is really the start of his substance use, drinking, drugs. And then, yes, he and the woman that he's with, they actually do end up getting married. Find out that they're pregnant. And this is then the piece of, right before that he finds out. And then that kind of goes into just this. And you see, I didn't show this part, but there's this clip where like he finds out and the realization hits him, right? And it's like, oh boy, right? Like this is really happening, right? Like I'm going to be a dad. And so, yeah, I mean, there's right off the bat, only because I have so many clients that also deal with abandonment, whether it's a mom, a dad, a different primary caregiver, but abandonment can stir up a lot of things, right? And this was one that clearly impacted him. Again, we can't really sit in this position of saying, "Oh yeah, that's it," right? That's the sole reason why he, you know, goes off on a binger and becomes an addict. No, this stuff is really complicated. But again, it is absolutely a pivotal piece of what he's navigating.
I'm gonna speak real quick, and I'm gonna kick it right back to you, boss. Spence, strategic, but we did an old clip, Mike Tyson biopic TV show, and I love always referring to this. Is when you hit the kid after you've been working a while, it's just, man, you talk about how good they're doing this and that, right? And they'd be like, it's you, the therapist, you did it. You did this. I didn't do shit. I met with you 6 hours in like 5 months, probably 3 months. It's all you. And then I tell the kid, man, you're just so easy to love. And you're not supposed to use that, but I use it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these kids, you invest love and time, and then you see them grow. And my God, just with a few hours and a few months, you're like, that's all it took. And you reflect back on that little bit of love and watering.
Mm-hmm.
You were so easy to love. Means they already had everything they already needed. Why can't their parents do it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something must be deeply flawed in that parent, not you, kiddo. But even without you never being watered, then I'll turn to my computer, I'll pull it up, and I said, even flowers grow in the desert, desolate, no rain. And then the kid usually tanks. And that's true. Some of us have no watering at all. None at all. But somehow we still become magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
So I deal with a lot of kids with those parent issues. Why can't my mom do this? Why can't my dad show up? Why can't they just be normal? I don't know, kid. They got their own shit and they just can't show up. They can't.
Totally, right.
They can't. So again, another good scene. I wonder, because you said a lot of people deal with these issues. I feel like experience with the folks that are in the autistic community, I think is even higher, man, because most of the time, parents don't even know that they're neurodivergent or autistic. And then the kiddo, they don't know how to love the kiddo because the way the parent loves is different than the way the kiddo needs to be loved. And so you get this, maybe they were good parents, but they never fully got engaged with the kid. They never really invested in their art or their craft or their music or their Pokemon, unless they always felt neglected and bullied. Always be normal. That's what I was thinking about while watching the scene. And then you get this dad that just doesn't show up, and you're like, well, now you're just a piece of shit. That ain't got nothing to do with you trying and you didn't meet them. You just suck. So that's a tough one there. That's a tough scene. The dad just doesn't show up. And I'm not joking. I've got multiple clients, Spence, where they've done these blood tests with the 23andMe's. And it turns out they got siblings down the street. Down the street. And my clients are like, what the shit? I got this whole family I didn't even know about. And then my client is like, I fucking hate my dad because they hid this family. Or I hate my mom because they hid this family. So, right, this isn't crazy. This is like real stuff that happens where the parent will skip out, be down the street. 23andMe's catching people up, man.
Yeah, no, oh my God. To that, there was something that was circulating. I can't remember where it was, but it was like, if you want to ruin families, do not give 23andMe around Christmas time. Like, don't give it as a gift.
That's what they did.
It's actually like, yeah, I mean, that's very real.
Who would give a test for Christmas?
I don't know.
People want to find out their ancestry and like, but
they were a Nazi. You're like, God damn it. God.
But then, I think you raise a really interesting point, right? And I think this then why I love the book, right? And the show is because you really see the depth of emotion that can come from these wounds, right? These parent attachment wounds, right? The abandonment, right? Which is, there is so much. I mean, if we could peel back the layers of people's skin and see the emotion that is moving inside of people, I mean, oh my gosh, right? Like the grief and the anger and the sadness and the raw pain. I mean, there is a lot there. And then potentially, right, that internalization, right? The shame, is it me? Am I the one that is not worthy of loving, right? Because we know that people go there as well. I mean, these are just they're so incredibly complex. And again, I think it then ties back into that piece of like, hey, how we as human try to make meaning and navigate and cope with that shit, it makes a lot of sense. More often than not, it makes a ton of sense why people are going to whatever
Everywhere.
they're going to in order to cope.
So you said at 26 you had that identity crisis,
Mhm.
you know, right? And you know, some of my kids have it before college, some of it's during college, some of it's after college.
Yeah.
A lot of my international kids, it's work, 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 and then so they never know anything other than intelligence and intellectualizing. And then they come to me like, "Hey, man, so I'm going to kill myself by the time I'm 21." I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, well we got 1 year."
Yeah.
And I said, "Why?" Because I'll never experience anything other than work.
Mm.
And what do I do after work? So then it's about figuring out what the hell life is, the meaning.
Totally.
And it gets super scary. It gets super scary. The way it affects relationships, I think about this scene is how someone in this scene position, the dad, grows up with, okay, they're unlovable
Mhm.
because the parent didn't stay. So that means that they're the unlovable one.
Right.
So that leads to they treat themselves like shit, and then they get in relationships with shit. And so that person's either cheating on them, using them financially, emotionally. You know, I got one of my favorite humans currently. Every human's just graduating. And it's just a lifelong time of just, believing that they suck. Parents are awesome, but parents are magnificent. They're not the issue. But there's a lot of neurodivergence that leads them to feeling awkward, which allows them to get bullied and pushed on, right? And pushed on. And it just soaks into almost everything.
Yeah.
And I get so angry as a therapist too, because people are taking advantage of my person.
Mm.
And the closer you get to me, the more protective I get. And the more protective I get, then it's harder to hide my emotions. And I'm a big boy, so those emotions come out sometimes, and I'll be sitting there like, I'm going to kill this kid. I looked at a few clients, I'm like, I just need an address. Why you need that? You give me, what car they drive? Is it green? Is it? I know some people in Flint can handle some shit now.
We do not condone violence on this
No,
podcast.
we're joking.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Hey, whatever y'all say, know.
Yeah.
Hey,
Did not give a specific location of where you would find people.
What happens in Flint stays in Flint.
Okay, sure.
No, but for real, it's really tough when you're taking care of these kiddos, and it's hard. It's really hard when you get connected and you love people, man, especially as a wounded healer, because you don't want to see them be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Small little pivot. Have you dealt with any clients that are getting ready to have a baby or that are pregnant, any of that stuff? Or no, not so much? Because I know you're like maybe younger, college age. You've had some kids get pregnant.
No, especially in no, because like so I have my business and then I have like me as a therapist. I keep them separately, and like as a therapist, I mean, no, I've got clients into 50s, 60s. So yeah, I actually just had a client become a parent for the first time about 3 months ago. And wow, I'm not a mom yet. Hopefully one day. So I can't, fully understand where my client is, right? But yeah, I mean, oh my goodness, what a
roller coaster.
Completely life-changing, right? And so again, right, if we go back to that kind of analogy of peeling back the layers and seeing the emotion inside, I mean, wow, so much fear and again, we all have to remember that like at a foundational level, right? We learn and inherit so much from our families of origin, right? And we, at the end of the day, right, if we do the work and we have awareness, we have a choice, right? Whether we want to take things from our family of origin and our caregivers that were really supportive and helpful and beneficial, and we're going to pass that on to our children, or do we want to break that, right? Do we want to break that cycle? Do we want to be different? Do we want to love differently? Do we want to connect differently? And so I think that's a piece with this client in particular that I've seen take shape, which is such a, wow, it's really hard. It's really hard, I think, I can imagine as a new parent to, I think, admit that, wow, there's pieces of my parents that actually weren't good enough. And I don't want to bring that to my child. That's really hard.
Yep.
And so, yeah, definitely. I mean,
Definitely. I wanted people to reflect back. If you listen to this podcast, please go back to the Invincible podcast that dropped out a couple of weeks before this, maybe a month before this, about a young man not wanting to be like his father. It's an animated series, also on Amazon. And the stuff that we grab from that is like heartbreaking. Because the dad's supposed to be a superhero, ends up being like this mass genocidal maniac of people. And the kid's a good kid. He's just a magnificent kid. But then he loses his shit. And then he's like, I am my dad because I lost my shit. And that leads to a big trauma spike, massive trauma spike. And it looks like he's actually going to take his own life in one of the clips. So you're right. The family stuff can mess you up.
Yeah.
Shout out to anyone listening to the pod that's dealing with drug and alcohol issues to help with the trauma and cope. It's tough. You're gonna relapse. Mental health is constant relapses, man. You want 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's part of the program. You know, you go to therapy. Maybe you gotta go back to therapy. You know, shit happens. So don't shame yourself and then just go full off the wagon. That's where you get screwed. I'm in with this. One of my clients, they said, I did all this shit now. I did everything you told me. I went to class. I'm sleeping better. I broke up with this asshole. I'm off all the drugs, cocaine. And life is boring. But you're doing good in school and you're going to graduate. And you respect yourself and you're healthy. But it's boring as shit and I'm alone. Why? It's because you're not letting toxic people around you no more. You get to go choose and do good things and expect better people. But I'm alone now. So it's tough. It's a tough phase. So for those of you that are going through that, continue to make your community, continue to stay healthy. And if you fall off the wagon a little bit, which that person did, then they didn't come to therapy for a while because they were so ashamed to come back to me. And then eventually they did.
Yeah.
And then eventually they graduated. But it's a tough cycle.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and sorry, last point here is that like that's one of the hardest pieces around substance use, right? Because using has been such a part of their affect regulation, their emotion navigation, right? So then when they're clean, right? When we're not using, of course, it's raw, right? It's really hard. And so then the work becomes around building their capacity to be with that, right? To be with emotion and difficult experiences in a new way that is healthy, right? It's healthy and it's hard, right? But the reality is that we are not immune to pain. No. Pain is going to come, baby, right? And the name of the game is, how do you build your tolerance for it? How do you build your tolerance for it without reaching for, again, those kind of creative or maladaptive coping mechanisms?
Yeah, that's when I would lean on a lot of the cultural heritage of ancestors, or I'd lean back on the gender and being a strong woman. Yeah. That's when I changed my voice like I just did now. Yeah, this is a good one. I'm glad you came on the podcast, man. I'm just excited. Lovely individual. I've appreciated you so much today. The energy.
Likewise. Oh, well, thank you. I mean, your guys' energy is great too. This was fantastic. This is easily one of the most fun podcasts I've ever been on.
Well, the last person said we was brilliant.
You are. This is a brilliant idea.
Didn't force that at all.
Fantastic idea. I love it.
I love it.
I want to come back.
You want to come back? Well,
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it.
That must be.
Well, don't go that far.
That must be the drugs. I got the sugars.
Well, I'm drinking water.
Sure. All right.
That's what my athletes say.
Hey, vodka looks clear too, let me tell you. Thank you so much, Emily, for coming on. Any plugs before you get off the show?
Plugs.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a pretty accessible person as long as you can type Emily Perrin. But YouTube. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
It's Emily Perrin. I have Instagram, Emily Perrin LMSW. I'm on Twitter, Emily L. Perrin. My website is Perrin Wellness and Performance. Yeah, I've got a couple free like downloads, resources for athletes,
Okay.
tons of stuff. You name it, it's probably on the internet. So
Okay. I'll do my best to click, hyperlink most of all the good stuff that I want to share with people. So you're going to be,
I can send you.
you're also going to be plugged. I'll find it. Spence is the best Snoop there is. He found your social somewhere.
Well, you know,
it said ain't
don't worry
worth
about
nothing, but he got it. You know, we're actually just going to sell it to what we call the immigrants.
Hey, your information is gone, so
it's gone. You know, thank you. No, much love. Definitely a perfect individual to be doing this work. Any of that self-doubt or imposter syndrome you got going on, that's bullshit. So don't even believe that shit. Yeah, that's yeah.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah. So much love. Spence, let's take it away.
All right. Yeah. Thank you once again, Emily, for coming on. Go check out our Be a Man collection that we have on. I have the hat on. Be a Man. Talk. This isn't it's not one of those hats.
It's
Calm
not.
down. It's not, people. All right. I want to hear no shit on the internet once this episode comes out. So thank you once again. I'm Spencer. That's Nas. Different Spectrum Podcast.
All right, everyone. You remember now. Take care of yourselves.
Or don't.
That's completely up to you. Peace.